I never thought I'd find myself standing on the sidewalk at 63 years old with just 2 suitcases, watching my daughter stare at me like I was a problem she couldn't wait to remove. But life has a way of exposing the truth at the most unexpected moments, like when the lottery ticket I had forgotten in my handbag turned out to be worth $14,700,000. And the child I brought into this world told me I was no longer welcome. Before I go on, tell me where you're listening from, and if this story touches you, stay with me, because what happened next changed everything. That morning began like any other Tuesday in Port Harvel. A blanket of sea mist covered our old Victorian-style home in the Lighthouse District. I had lived there for 37 years, raising Jessalyn within those creaking wooden floors and stained glass windows, filling each room with botanical illustrations that had once been my passion until I set them aside to become a mother. I still remember the moment I noticed the small envelope from the Port Harvel Lottery Commission tucked among the morning mail. I had bought that ticket months earlier, a small birthday gift to myself, then completely forgot about it. When I opened it, the world seemed to stop. It was a confirmation of winnings, with instructions to visit the Pinnacle Tower in Westholme to claim the prize. My hands trembled as I read the number. $14,700,000, about $8.9 million after taxes. I couldn't breathe. I couldn't think. It was the answer to all the worries that had kept me awake ever since Jessalyn and her husband, Rafferty, moved in 6 months ago, saying they needed time to rebuild their lives after his investment firm collapsed. I slipped the letter into the pocket of my cardigan, keeping it close to my heart like a warm secret. I wasn't ready to tell them. That evening, I planned to surprise them with a special dinner. Maybe even talk about renovating the house. Jessalyn kept mentioning things I could never afford on my small pension from the Port Harvel Botanical Society. That money would change everything. But first, I needed to claim it. I had just said I was stepping out when Jessalyn blocked the doorway. Her perfect blonde hair was hastily tied back, her face tense. "Mom, we need to talk. Raf and I have been thinking, and we believe it's time to make some changes." Rafferty walked out of the kitchen holding a mug of coffee, his wrinkled shirt looking like he'd slept in it. He wore that usual forced smile, the kind that never reached his eyes. "Teresa," he said, calling me by my first name, as always. "You've been very generous, letting us stay here while we get back on our feet." Something in his tone made me uneasy. I gripped my handbag, feeling the letter inside. "This is my home, Rafferty. You're both welcome here." Jessalyn sat at the dining table and gestured for me to join her. "That's exactly the thing, Mom. Raf and I think it's best if we take over the house entirely." "Take over?" I repeated, not understanding. "We want to start our family here," she explained in that polished, persuasive tone she had perfected as admissions director at Thornfield Academy. "But the house needs a full renovation. 3 generations under one roof can get complicated." "What are you two saying?" My voice didn't even sound like mine. Rafferty clasped his hands, dropping the polite act. "We think you'd be happier in a retirement community. Serenity Gardens has excellent options. We've already spoken with them." I looked at them, my daughter and son-in-law, and saw 2 strangers. "You want to put me in a nursing home? I'm 63, not sick." "Mom," Jessalyn sighed, her voice all formality now. "Be reasonable. The house is too big for you to manage." "I've never complained about the stairs," I said. "And the property taxes are high," she continued, as if I hadn't spoken. "We can take care of everything as long as you sign it over to us." The letter in my pocket burned like fire. I could have ended the conversation right then by telling the truth, but something stopped me. A terrible realization. They had planned this. "The house is in my name," I said quietly. "I bought it with the money I earned illustrating the Coastal Flora Encyclopedia." Rafferty leaned forward, his tone sharp. "And for 20 years you've reminded Jessalyn about that sacrifice. Don't you think it's time to stop?" I froze. That was a lie. "Every birthday, every Christmas," Jessalyn chimed in. "You mentioned giving up your career to raise me, like I forced you to be my mother." Her words hit me like knives. I'd only brought up my old work 3 times in 10 years, and always with fondness, never regret. "That's not fair," I said. "What's not fair?" Rafferty countered, is expecting us to put our lives on hold because you're afraid of change. Jessalyn has a reputation to uphold at Thornfield. We need to entertain guests. This house has potential, but not with all the lace curtains and faded watercolors everywhere. Tears stung my eyes, but I blinked them back. Those watercolors helped pay for your education and your wedding, I said. Jessalyn's eyes narrowed. There it is again, the victim act. I stood up. I needed air. I'm going out. We'll talk later. Actually, Rafferty said, glancing at Jessalyn, we've already made arrangements. What? I froze. The movers are coming tomorrow. Tomorrow? I could hardly breathe. You expect me to pack up my entire life in one day? We've hired help, Jessalyn said in that calm, managerial tone of hers. And Serenity Gardens has a room reserved for you until tomorrow afternoon. A reserved room, I repeated. I don't need support. Mom, she pressed on, you've been forgetting things. Last month you left the stove on twice. You misplaced your medication. I've just been unsettled because you two took over my space, I said. You rearranged my routines. Rafferty took my study, and you moved everything in the kitchen so I can't even find my own things anymore. The doorbell rang. Jessalyn went to answer it and returned with Octavia Harcourt, her old college friend and an influential member of Thornfield's board. My stomach clenched. Octavia. Jessalyn's demeanor instantly shifted. She flashed a perfect smile. You came at the right time. I was just showing Mom the Serenity Gardens brochure. Octavia gave me that pitying look that made my skin crawl. Teresa, are you all right? Jessalyn told me about the difficult decision you're facing. I turned to my daughter. What did you tell her? That you've been struggling with the house, Octavia said softly, and that you admitted it's become too much for you. It's brave to know when it's time for a change. The realization hit cold. They'd already told people I wanted to leave. They were controlling the narrative, making it seem like my choice. I began, but Rafferty cut in smoothly. We're still discussing it, he said to Octavia, but everyone agrees it's for the best. I looked at the three of them, my daughter, her husband, her friend, talking about my future as if I weren't even in the room. Telling this story takes time. If you're still with me, stay to the end. What happened next changed everything. Now, let's continue. The letter in my pocket no longer felt like a happy secret, but like proof of something I hadn't realized until now, and that was when I decided. I need some air, I said, grabbing my coat. Mom, we're having an important conversation, Jessalyn snapped. And I need to think, I replied, moving toward the door. Unless you plan to stop me. The flicker of confusion on her face, especially in front of Octavia, gave me just enough time. I walked quickly down the street toward the harbor, my mind spinning. When I reached the old lighthouse, I knew exactly what to do. I called a cab straight to Pinnacle Tower. A few hours later, I was sitting across from Lana Creswell, the payout officer, signing the final documents to transfer $8,900,000 into a newly established trust in my name. She was efficient and kind, even scheduling a financial advisor meeting immediately afterward. Congratulations again, Miss Thornwick, Lana said, handing me a temporary debit card with an advance of $250,000. The full amount will be available within 2 days. Is there anything else we can assist you with? I hesitated, then asked, is there a way to keep this private? I don't want my name released. Lana nodded. In Port Harville, winners have the right to remain anonymous. Your identity won't be public, unless you authorize it. I exhaled, relieved. Thank you. As I walked through the gleaming lobby, I caught my reflection in the glass doors. The same brown and silver hair, the same time-worn face, but something inside me had changed. Instead of going home, I stopped by the office of Valencia Moretti, one of the most respected attorneys in Port Harville. I hadn't planned to, but something told me I should. Valencia listened intently as I explained everything. When I finished, her sharp eyes hardened. Let me make sure I understand, she said. The house is in your name, bought with your own earnings. Your daughter and her husband moved in 6 months ago, supposedly temporary, and now they're trying to force you into a retirement facility to take control of your property. That's right, I said. And they're telling everyone it was my idea, claiming I can't live alone anymore. Valencia's expression turned cold. And today you learned you've won a substantial lottery prize which they don't know about. Yes. She tapped her pen against the desk, weighing her words. Miss Thornwick, I don't usually advise clients to keep financial secrets from family, but in this case, she paused, I think you should secure your position before revealing anything. Their behavior suggests they intend to control your assets. When I left her office, I already had a clear plan and legal protections in place for the money I'd just won. I felt lighter than I had in months, even knowing there'd be a storm waiting at home. By the time I returned, it was past dinner. Jessalyn and Rafferty were in the living room with 3 strangers, all taking notes and evaluating furniture. Who are these people? I asked from the doorway. Jessalyn turned, her face a mix of irritation and forced patience. The design team from Harrow Interiors, they're preparing renovation estimates. In my house, without my consent. Rafferty stepped forward. Teresa, we already discussed this. The decision's been made. Not by me, I said, quiet but steady. Mom, Jessalyn cut in, we've already started. Serenity Gardens has held the room. The movers come tomorrow. Don't make this harder than it has to be. I looked around the room at the strangers judging my belongings, at my daughter's impatient expression, at the cold look in Rafferty's eyes. This was the home where I had raised my child alone after her father died, where I'd spent sleepless nights painting rare coastal plants to keep the mortgage paid. Every object, every picture, every book carried a piece of me. Out, I said, my voice firm enough to surprise even myself. The designers exchanged uncertain glances. A young woman clutching a folder mumbled something about coming back later. Mom, don't embarrass us, Jessalyn hissed. I'm not talking to them, I said. I'm talking to you and Rafferty. Get out of my house. Rafferty laughed, but his tension was obvious. You can't be serious. I've never been more serious. This is my house. My name is on the deed. I paid for it. I maintained it. I poured my life into it, and I'm not leaving. Jessalyn's face flushed. We already made arrangements. You have no right, I cut in. I'm not sick. I'm not helpless. And I won't give up my home just because it doesn't fit the image you want to project at Thornfield. Ridiculous, Rafferty snapped. And the 2 of you are acting like thieves, I said. You can leave tomorrow. They froze, shocked I'd stood up to them. Then Jessalyn's expression hardened, twisted into something unrecognizable. Fine, she said icily. If that's what you want. But don't come crying when you can't afford the property taxes or when the roof leaks. Don't expect us to bail you out when your pension runs dry. I'll manage, I said. With what your measly pension from the Botanical Society? Rafferty sneered. Don't kid yourself, Teresa. You need us more than we need you. I almost pulled the letter from my pocket then, almost showed them how wrong they were. But something stopped me. If money was the only thing that could change their tone, then they had never truly loved me. I think this conversation is over, I said. Jessalyn's eyes sharpened. This house isn't just yours. Dad left part of it to me. That was a lie. My husband had left everything to me, trusting I would care for our daughter, and I had, without fail. But Jessalyn actually believed her own story. Check the deed, Jessalyn, I said calmly. It's in my name. Always has been. We'll see, she shot back, her voice turning into a threat. If you force us out, we'll sue. We've lived here long enough to claim residency rights. Then speak to my lawyer, I said, stepping aside. Now get out. Rafferty looked like he wanted to argue, but with the designers still standing there, his pride won out. This isn't over, he muttered as they walked out. When they left, the designers quickly apologized and followed them out. I sat alone in the living room, surrounded by the quiet of my own house. For that brief moment, I had it back. But I knew better. Jessalyn and Rafferty wouldn't give up easily. I picked up the phone and called Valencia, telling her everything that had just happened. They said my daughter has inheritance rights from her father, I finished. Valencia's response came firm and immediate. Absolutely not. I reviewed the records. The house is solely in your name. Your husband left everything to you. So they have no legal claim? I asked. None beyond temporary residence rights, and that can be handled through eviction procedures. I'll have the notice ready by tomorrow morning. But if they resist, it could take at least 30 days to remove them legally. I sighed. What do I do tonight? They're still in the house. Document everything, Valencia said. If they threaten you, call the police. And Teresa, consider finding a temporary place to stay. Tension can escalate quickly when people share a roof. I thought about it. The $250,000 already in my account was more than enough for a decent place. But why should I leave my own home? Still, staying under the same roof with people who'd tried to throw me out was dangerous. While I was thinking, I heard heavy footsteps on the stairs. Rafferty appeared at the doorway, his face tight with restrained anger. "You're making a mistake," he said flatly. "You mean by refusing to be forced into a retirement home?" I asked. He folded his arms. "You're not seeing the big picture. Jessalyn deserves this house. It's her childhood home, and it's also the home we've helped maintain these past 6 months while trying to rebuild with the money you made from those paintings." He gave a mocking laugh. "Funny," I said quietly. "Jessalyn told me her father paid for the house." Another lie. Every dollar in that house came from my work. "Believe whatever you want," he said dismissively. "The truth doesn't need your approval," I replied, tired but calm. He stepped closer, lowering his voice. "You know what your problem is, Teresa? You're just a small-town illustrator who got lucky once with a book deal. You've been living off that one success ever since, thinking you're something special." His words didn't shrink me, they clarified everything. "If that's really how you see me after all these years," I said softly, "then it's definitely time for you to go." "We're not leaving," he snapped, "and if you stay, you'll find life here very uncomfortable." The threat hung in the air. For a second, I felt uneasy, not because I feared what they might do physically, but because I knew how cruel psychological warfare could be. Then I remembered the letter, my meeting with Valencia, and the $8,900,000 that would be in my account in 2 days. I didn't need to win tonight. I just needed to stand my ground until I could change everything. "Good night, Rafferty," I said, standing. "I'm going to bed." He looked surprised by my composure but stepped aside as I climbed the stairs. "This isn't over," he shouted after me. I turned slightly. "I agree," I said. "It's just beginning." That night, I barely slept, listening for every sound in the hallway, afraid they might try something. But morning arrived peacefully, bringing with it a new sense of resolve. I chose clothes that made me feel strong, a deep blue blouse that brought out my eyes, tailored slacks, and my best boots. Today mattered, and I needed to look composed. When I went downstairs, Jessalyn was sitting at the kitchen table, sipping coffee and working on her laptop. She glanced at me, then back to the screen without a word. I poured myself some coffee, the tension in the room thick enough to touch. As I reached for a cup, I noticed that several of my botanical illustrations were missing from the wall. "Where are my paintings?" I asked. Jessalyn looked up. "We packed them. Since you refused to cooperate with the move, we decided to start without you." A chill spread through my stomach. "Those are my originals. Where did you put them?" "In storage," she said casually. "Don't worry, they're safe." The way she spoke about my life's work the illustrations museums once asked to display made something inside me crack. I want them back now. Jessalyn finally met my gaze, her expression flat. "They're not here anymore. Raf took them to storage this morning." "Without my permission?" My voice trembled. "Those pieces are worth thousands of dollars." "They're just botanical drawings, Mom," she said, rolling her eyes. "No one cares about those outdated sketches." I set my cup down just before it slipped from my hand. My fingers suddenly felt weak. "Where's Rafferty?" "At a meeting with our lawyer," she said smugly. "We're discussing our rights to this property." I didn't bother arguing. Instead, I asked, "Which storage facility?" "I need to know." "Why do you care?" "You'll get them back eventually," she said airily. I steadied my voice. "Jessalyn, those works are my intellectual property. Taking them without consent is theft." She laughed, her tone sharp as glass. "Are you really calling the police over your own paintings? Oh, that'll look great for both of us at Thornfield." She was right, it would draw attention. But if she thought that would stop me, she was mistaken. I picked up my phone and started dialing. "Who are you calling?" she snapped. I didn't answer, waiting for the line to connect. "Port Harville Police Department, non-emergency line," came the operator's voice. Jesselyn's eyes widened. She shot up so fast her chair screeched against the floor. "You wouldn't dare." I met her gaze and spoke clearly into the phone. "Yes, I'd like to report stolen property." "Mom," she hissed, lunging for the phone. I stepped back and continued calmly. "My name is Teresa Thornwick. My daughter and son-in-law removed valuable artwork from my home without consent and refused to disclose where it was taken." As I spoke to the dispatcher, Jesselyn's face shifted shock, fury, then calculation. She grabbed her own phone and walked into the hallway, speaking in a low, hurried tone. 10 minutes later, just as I hung up, Rafferty stormed through the front door, his face red with rage. "What do you think you're doing?" "Protecting my property," I said evenly. "The police are coming to take a report." "Seriously, they're just old drawings," he shouted. "You took them without my permission and hid them from me," I said. Jesselyn cut in, her voice defiant. "They're at Port Harville Storage, Harbor Road, Unit number 217. There, happy now? Still calling the police?" "No," I said. "This has gone too far already. I want everything officially documented." Rafferty's face darkened. "You have no idea who you're dealing with. I have connections in this town. One phone call and your reputation's done." "Is that a threat?" I asked, making sure my phone's recorder was on. He froze, realizing his mistake. "I'm just stating facts." "No one will believe you." "Then we'll see who's more credible," I replied. "I have ownership documents and a theft report. You have nothing but bluster." The doorbell rang, the police had arrived. For the next hour, they took statements, filled out reports, and tried to keep things civil. They explained that removing the paintings could be recorded in the file, but criminal charges were tricky because of family ties. "We recommend resolving it through civil court," said the older officer. "Mediation might help." I nodded. I had already planned for that. My goal wasn't to see them jailed, it was to create a record proving I wouldn't be intimidated. After the officers left, silence fell heavy over the house. Jesselyn and Rafferty went upstairs, their footsteps overhead reminding me they were still there. I took the opportunity to call Valencia and update her. "You did the right thing," she said. "Document everything. I've prepared the eviction notice, we can file it today." "I'm ready," I replied. "One more thing," she added. "Given the situation, have you considered staying somewhere else for a while? Just for safety." I hesitated. Leaving felt like losing, but staying with two people who had tried to throw me out was reckless. "I could rent a hotel," I admitted. "That's best," Valencia agreed. "Pack your essentials and take anything irreplaceable." After hanging up, I moved through the house, gathering what mattered most: essential items and small keepsakes that held decades of memories. I packed 2 suitcases carefully, with both practicality and emotion guiding my hands. I was closing the second suitcase when Jesselyn appeared at the doorway. Her expression shifted from defiance to confusion as she realized what I was doing. "You're really leaving?" she asked, her voice softening slightly. "Just temporarily," I said, not looking at her. "After everything, you're just walking out?" I met her eyes. "I'm not walking out. I'm stepping away from a toxic situation on my lawyer's advice." Her eyes narrowed at the word lawyer. "So now you've hired an attorney against your own daughter?" "That's rich." "I hired an attorney," I corrected, "after you both tried to force me into a retirement home and steal my house. This is the consequence of your actions." "We were trying to help you," she protested. "No," I said quietly but firmly. "You were trying to help yourselves using my property and convincing yourselves it was for my good." Jesselyn looked away. "You don't understand." "I understand more than you think," I said, snapping my suitcase shut. "The eviction notice will be served this afternoon. You'll have 30 days to find somewhere else to live." Jesselyn's eyes widened. You're kicking your own family out? Yes. Where are we supposed to go? Ralph lost his job. That's no longer my problem, I said, surprised by the calm in my voice. You both decided I no longer mattered. Her face twisted, then hardened. You'll regret this. When you're old and alone, you'll remember today. I lifted my suitcase, feeling an odd lightness. I'll remember today as the day I stood up for myself. As I descended the stairs, she stepped aside, staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Anger, yes, but also something else. Fear, maybe even respect. Downstairs, I heard Rafferty on the phone, his voice tight and angry. He froze when he saw me, his eyes calculating. Running away? He asked. I'm making a strategic retreat, I said. There's a difference. He gave a short, cold laugh. You know, I always wondered why Jess was so afraid of turning into you. Now I get it. You're ruthless. That should have hurt. But instead, it made me stronger. No, Rafferty, I said evenly. I've just given my heart away too freely for too long. That ends today. I walked past him, toward the front door, stopping only to glance once more at the house I had built, at the life I had built. I would return, but when I did, everything would be different. Goodbye, I said, not to Rafferty, not even to the house, but to the fragile woman I used to be. I stepped onto the porch. The ocean wind lifted my hair, carrying the salt of new beginnings. My lawyer's car had just pulled up to the gate. Behind me, Rafferty started yelling at Jesselyn, his voice panicked. I didn't look back. I pulled my suitcase toward the car, heading for the future I would build for myself, not for my daughter, not for anyone else, but for me. The Crimson Tide Hotel was nothing like I had imagined. Standing in its marble-tiled lobby beneath a crystal chandelier, I felt out of place in my wrinkled clothes and worn shoes. The young receptionist, with smooth skin and the polished smile of someone used to wealthy guests, looked up. Welcome to the Crimson Tide. How may I assist you? I set down my suitcase. I'd like to book a room for 2 weeks. Her fingers danced across the keyboard. We have a standard king room on the 4th floor at $250 a night. Do you have anything overlooking the harbor? I asked, surprised at my own boldness. She studied me for a moment. We have a harbor view suite at $475 a night. I'll take it, I said, placing my new debit card on the polished counter. Her eyebrows lifted slightly when the transaction went through. I simply stood there, feeling a new chapter unfolding right in front of me. Very good, Mrs. Thornwick. Would you like assistance with your luggage? She asked. 20 minutes later, I stood inside a suite larger than my kitchen and dining room combined. Floor-to-ceiling windows opened to the Port Harville harbor, with the lighthouse rising proudly in the distance. A king-size bed filled one wall, while the other corner held an elegant sitting area with a fabric sofa that looked far too expensive to touch. The bathroom had a soaking tub deep enough for me to stretch out fully. I sat at the edge of the bed, suddenly overwhelmed. Just yesterday, I had been in the house I'd lived in for nearly 40 years, worrying about how to stretch my pension to cover property taxes. Now I was sitting in a luxury suite with millions in the bank. The contrast was dizzying. My phone buzzed. It was a message from Valencia. The eviction notice has been served. Call me when you're settled. I took a deep breath and called her back. How did they react? I asked once she answered. Exactly as I expected, Valencia said. Rafferty tried to intimidate my associate, and your daughter got emotional. But the papers were served and documented. They have 30 days. Thank you, I said, gazing out toward the harbor. What should I do next? Now we protect your assets and prepare for whatever they try next. And about the illustrations? The paintings, my life's work, were still sitting somewhere in that cold storage unit. Not an emergency, but they represented decades of dedication and had significant value. I want them back, I said clearly. I'll have someone confirm they're still in storage. If needed, we'll get a court order, Valencia assured me. For now, I recommend meeting with the financial advisor from the Lottery Commission. Managing this money properly is crucial. After hanging up, I unpacked my clothes, hung them neatly in the closet, and arranged my toiletries in the marble bathroom. Those small actions grounded me, made everything feel real. When I finished, I took out the small notebook I always carried and began a list. 1. Meet with the financial advisor. 2. Recover the illustrations. 3. Explore long-term housing options. And finally, the hardest question of all, what kind of relationship, if any, I wanted with Jessalyn from now on. The next morning, after the best sleep I'd had in months, I met with Zachary Pittman, the financial advisor Lana had recommended. His office overlooked West Holmes' business district, sleek yet comfortably formal. "Mrs. Thornwick," he greeted me, rising from his chair. "A pleasure to meet you." "I'm not sure what Lana told you about me," I said, taking a seat. He smiled. "She said you ask smart questions and haven't run out to buy a sports car. That already puts you ahead of 90% of lottery winners." For the next 2 hours, Zachary walked me through every financial option: taxes, investments, trusts, philanthropy, in language I could understand. By the end of the meeting, I had a clear picture of how to protect and grow my money. "Most lottery winners burn through their fortune in 5 years, he said, "but I don't think you're one of them." "I've lived frugally my whole life," I replied. "I doubt that'll change much." "Frugality is good," he said, "but give yourself permission to enjoy a little. Balance is key." I left his office with a solid financial plan. Some of the funds had already been invested. The rest would transfer gradually over the week. For the first time, I had access to more money than I'd earned in my entire life combined. On my way back to the hotel, I passed Blackburn Auction House, the most prestigious in Port Harval for art and antiques. A sign in front caught my eye: Maritime Collection Auction, Saturday. On instinct, I stepped inside. The space was quiet, elegant, bathed in soft light that highlighted every piece. A woman with dark hair streaked with silver approached me. Her tailored suit and pearl necklace gave her an air of timeless grace. "Welcome to Blackburn's," she said. "I'm Imogen. What brings you in today?" "Just looking," I replied. "I saw the sign about Saturday's auction." "Ah, the Harbormore Collection, maritime artifacts spanning 3 centuries of Port Harval's history. Would you like to see the catalog?" She handed me a beautifully bound booklet. I flipped through until I stopped at one listing: a set of original 19th century maps and nautical charts of the Port Harval coastline, with handwritten notes on local flora. "Beautiful," I murmured. "Quite special," Imogen agreed. Drawn by Captain Elias Winthrop, he was both a brilliant navigator and an amateur botanist. His notes record several coastal plant species that weren't classified until decades later. The more I looked, the more fascinated I became. "Starting bid is $5,000, Imogen said, "but it may go as high as $100,000. "Are you a collector?" "Teresa Thornwick." I introduced myself. "Not yet, but perhaps soon." Imogen blinked. Recognition dawning. "Thornwick, are you the illustrator of the Coastal Flora Encyclopedia? Your marsh orchid plates are extraordinary." Warmth spread through me. "Yes, that's me, though it's been a while since I've published anything new." "Our clients would love to meet you," she said. "Will you be attending the auction?" "I think I will," I answered, surprising even myself. Before I left, Imogen showed me a few more pieces she thought I'd appreciate. Her insight and enthusiasm made the conversation genuinely enjoyable. Art and history, the 2 subjects Jessalyn and Rafferty had always dismissed as useless. "If I may suggest," Imogen said, "if you're interested in the charts, join us for tomorrow evening's preview. It's invitation only, but I'd love to add you to the guest list. You'll be able to examine everything up close." I accepted the invitation, feeling a small spark of excitement. The first time in years, I'd felt part of a world of refinement I'd only admired from afar. Back at the hotel, I realized I had nothing suitable to wear for such an event. My wardrobe consisted of gardening clothes, painting smocks, and simple dresses for community events, nothing remotely appropriate for Blackburn's. I called the front desk. Felix, the young man who had helped with my luggage, answered. "Felix, do you know any boutiques nearby? I need something elegant." "Of course, Mrs. Thornwick. May I ask what for?" "I'll be attending the preview event at Blackburn's tomorrow evening." His tone brightened. Then you should visit Alicia on Harbor Road. They specialize in classic, refined styles. Shall I call ahead for you? An hour later, I was standing inside Alicia, greeted by its owner Vivian, a woman with striking confidence. She looked me over once and seemed to understand exactly what I needed. You have a wonderful frame, Vivian said, circling me thoughtfully, and your complexion such a beautiful blend of silver and warm brown will make that your strength. The experience felt more like an art consultation than shopping. Vivian selected each piece with an artist's eye, explaining how it suited my shape, tone, and age. She never tried to make me look younger, only my best, exactly as I was. This, she said, holding up a deep teal silk dress that shimmered softly in the light, is perfect for Blackburns, elegant, effortless, and exactly the right impression. When I stepped out of the fitting room in that dress, with a soft cashmere shawl and a pair of heels that were somehow both stylish and comfortable, the woman in the mirror was unmistakably me, yet someone new, confident, graceful, and quietly radiant. Exactly, Vivian smiled. This is what you needed. I left the boutique, not only with the outfit for Blackburns, but with several more pieces, 2 dresses, tailored trousers, blouses in colors I'd never dared to wear, yet made me glow, and accessories to match. The total cost exceeded what I'd spent in the past 5 years combined, but I signed the receipt without hesitation. On the way back to the hotel, I spotted a familiar black sedan Rafferty's car parked across the street. They had found me. But I wasn't afraid. On the contrary, a spark of defiance rose within me. Let them watch. Let them worry. I wasn't hiding anymore. I walked through the hotel lobby with my head held high, shopping bags swinging lightly by my side. If Rafferty was watching, he'd see a woman who hadn't broken but had transformed. I hung my new clothes in the suite's closet, already excited for the next evening's event. Then I called Valencia to report Rafferty's presence near the hotel. I expected that, she said. They're fishing for information or trying to rattle you. Be cautious about what you say in public. Should I be worried about anything worse than being followed? I asked. I don't think they'd risk anything illegal, she said, but document every encounter. If they approach you, record the conversation if you can. After hanging up, I ordered room service, an indulgence I'd never allowed myself before. I sat by the window, watching the harbor lights glow as dusk settled in. There was a strange peace in that in-between moment, suspended between the life I'd left and the one waiting ahead. The following evening, I prepared for the Blackburns event with unusual care. The teal silk dress draped perfectly, catching the light with each movement. I applied my makeup deliberately, liner, lipstick, a hint of blush. The woman in the mirror was both familiar and new, still me, but steadier, more assured, and radiant in a way I hadn't been in years. As I walked through the hotel lobby, a few admiring glances followed me. Felix at the front desk looked up and smiled brightly. Mrs. Thornwick, you look absolutely stunning tonight. Would you like me to call a car to take you to Blackburns? The auction house had been completely transformed for the evening. Soft lighting, waiters gliding through the crowd with trays of champagne and hors d'oeuvres, it all shimmered with quiet luxury. Imogen greeted me at the entrance, graceful in a black gown and a single strand of pearls. Teresa, I'm so glad you came, she said, using my first name as if we'd known each other for years. There are a few people I'd like you to meet. They admire your work deeply. Before I could respond, she was already leading me through the crowd, introducing me to collectors, artists, and Port Harville's cultural elite. To my surprise, many of them knew my name, speaking about my botanical illustrations with genuine appreciation. One of your paintings on the marshland ecosystem changed the way I see this coastline, an older gentleman told me. I've walked those beaches my whole life, but your work made me notice what I'd always overlooked. The precision in every stroke is incredible, added a young woman who introduced herself as a botanical photographer. Digital photography still can't capture what you do with watercolor and ink. Each conversation reconnected me to the artist I used to be, the one buried under decades of motherhood, sacrifice, and silence. While I was wandering near the maritime exhibit that would be auctioned on Saturday, I sensed a sudden shift in the room's energy. I turned and understood why. Octavia Harcourt stood at the doorway, her sharp gaze scanning the room. Beside her was my daughter Jessalyn, wearing a tight cocktail dress that made her look uncomfortable. Her eyes met mine: shock, disbelief, and something close to panic. I silently thanked the deep teal dress, the subtle makeup, and the calm confidence I'd finally reclaimed. To have her see me like this, not as the mother she could push aside, but as a woman standing firmly in a world she never imagined I could enter, was its own quiet victory. Imogen stepped closer, catching the exchange. "Friends of yours?" she asked softly. "My daughter and her friend," I murmured. Understanding flickered in Imogen's eyes. "Would you like to avoid them?" I thought for a moment, then straightened my shoulders. "No. But I wouldn't mind someone nearby when they approach. They will." Imogen nodded and made a subtle gesture toward a tall man inspecting a display case nearby. "Lawrence, our security consultant. Former police officer. He'll keep an eye out discreetly." Sure enough, within minutes Jessalyn and Octavia were striding toward me, faces tight with tension. Jessalyn's expression was a tangled mix of anger, confusion, and unease. "Hi, Mom," she said loudly. "What a surprise to see you here." I sipped my champagne. "Yes, I imagine it is." Octavia cut in with her practiced sweetness. "Dear Teresa, no one's seen you since you left home. Jessalyn's been so worried." I nearly laughed. How thoughtful. Funny. Though no one called or texted to check on me. "We didn't know where you were," Jessalyn shot back. "Well, now you do," I said mildly. Octavia glanced around, making sure no one overheard. "This isn't the place for a family discussion. Why don't we talk somewhere more private?" "I'm perfectly comfortable right here," I replied. Actually, I was just about to take a closer look at those nautical charts. I turned toward the glass case displaying Captain Winthrop's maps, fully aware they were following. Lawrence shifted just enough to stay within sight. "Mom," Jessalyn whispered, lowering her voice. "What are you doing here? How did you even get in? This event costs a fortune." "I was invited," I said, leaning in to study the delicate ink lines. "By who?" she pressed. "By me," Imogen said smoothly, appearing beside us. "Mrs. Thornwick is an exceptional botanical illustrator. Her work on coastal ecosystems complements the Winthrop collection beautifully." Jessalyn blinked, visibly thrown off balance. She had dismissed my work for so long that hearing others praise it left her speechless. Octavia recovered quickly. "Of course, Teresa's work is respected in certain circles. That's precisely why we've been so worried. She left home abruptly, making some rather wild accusations about her family. We're only concerned for her mental well-being." I felt the blood drain from my face. That was their play, painting me as unstable, to challenge the eviction or even claim guardianship. "How interesting," Imogen said coolly. "Mrs. Thornwick seems perfectly lucid to me. In fact, we were just discussing her potential role in curating a botanical art exhibit next season." I nearly gasped, but managed to keep my expression calm, silently grateful for Imogen's quick wit. "That's a bit premature," Octavia replied, her voice soft again. "Her health should come first. Her doctor advised her to avoid stressful activities." "I don't have any doctor who said that," I said firmly, "and I'm perfectly healthy." Jessalyn gripped my hand a little too tightly. "Mom, you know you've been forgetting things lately. The stove, those appointments you missed. Admit it, you need help." I pulled my hand free. "I haven't missed a single appointment. And the stove issue happened because you rearranged my kitchen without asking." Lawrence was now close enough for me to feel safer. Jessalyn noticed and lowered her voice to a hiss. "You're embarrassing yourself acting like you belong here. Where did you even get that dress? It's ridiculous for your age." The old me might have flinched. The woman I was now simply arched an eyebrow. "If you're finished, I have people to see and work to discuss. Enjoy the evening." I turned back to the maps, leaving them standing there. Octavia tugged at Jessalyn's arm, realizing they were losing ground in front of the crowd. "We'll talk later," Jessalyn said stiffly, but it came out more like a sulk. "With you, it's never really over," I said without looking up. Once they were gone, Imogen rejoined me. Handled beautifully, they seemed unsettled. I'd agree, I said softly. Thank you for standing by me, and for that curator idea. She smiled, her eyes gleaming. Who said it was just an idea? I've been planning a botanical art exhibit for months. Your name actually came up, we just hadn't reached out yet. I stared at her. You're serious? Completely. If you're interested, we can talk after the auction. She nodded toward the Winthrop charts, the very ones that had started all of this. After the preview ended, Imogen approached me again. You truly loved those maps, didn't you? Will you be bidding on Saturday? The question caught me off guard. A week ago, spending tens of thousands of dollars on antique maps would have been unthinkable. But now, I found myself nodding. I think I will. Imogen smiled approvingly. Wonderful. There's someone else you should meet, a maritime historian who's studied Winthrop's work for decades. Saturday morning, I arrived early and sat in the back row, where I could observe without drawing attention. The room filled quickly, collectors, museum representatives, curious locals. I was relieved not to see Jessalyn or Octavia among them. When it came time for the Winthrop maps, I raised my paddle with a confidence that surprised me. The bidding started at $5,000 and climbed fast. By $60,000, only 2 bidders remained, myself and a representative from the Westholme Maritime Museum. $95,000, the representative said. I hesitated for a heartbeat. $100,000. A short pause followed. The other bidder spoke quietly into a phone, then shook his head and lowered his paddle. The gavel came down. Sold to paddle 47 for $100,000. It was the largest purchase of my life, second only to my old house, but instead of regret, I felt deeply satisfied. The map's detailed depictions of the coastline I had spent years painting felt like a bridge between my work and a kindred spirit across time. After the auction, I completed the paperwork and arranged for the maps to be stored safely until I found a permanent home. As I was signing the final documents, Imogen returned with a man I recognized as the museum representative. Teresa, may I introduce Dr. Harrison Wilford from the Westholme Maritime Museum? He's eager to speak with you. The thin, bespectacled man shook my hand. Congratulations on your purchase. The Winthrop charts are of tremendous historical value. I was captivated the moment I saw them, I said. Our museum had hoped to acquire them, but perhaps you'd consider a loan? We'd handle all preservation, display, and full acknowledgement of your ownership. The offer surprised me but also intrigued me. I had never considered such a thing. Perhaps I could visit the museum next week to discuss the details. It would be an honor, he said warmly. Those maps deserve to be seen by the public. When he left, Imogen smiled. Very clever. Lending them to the museum keeps your name as the owner, while sparing you the burden of preservation. And it's an excellent way to enter the collector's circle. I hadn't thought that far ahead, but I nodded as if it had been my plan all along. Those maps deserve to be cherished, I said. Exactly, Imogen agreed. Would you be free for lunch on Tuesday to discuss the exhibit? I accepted. When I returned to the hotel, news of my purchase had already spread through Port Harvel. Felix greeted me with newfound respect, and the other staff glanced curiously as I passed. In a town like this, high-profile auctions were the talk of the upper class. I had just sat down when my phone rang. A local number flashed on the screen, Port Harvel area code. Good afternoon, Mrs. Thornwick, a man's voice said. This is Thaddeus Queen from Seaside Realty. We met briefly last night at Blackburn's. I vaguely remembered him, a tall man with silver hair, an expensive watch, and a confident smile. Hello, Mr. Queen. What can I do for you? I heard you might not have a permanent residence yet. I've just listed a property not yet public, but I think it would suit you perfectly. A home with historic character, recently renovated. Normally I would have politely declined, but Zachary's words echoed in my mind about finding balance between prudence and joy. What kind of property? I asked. It's the former lighthouse keeper's home at North Point, nearly 2 acres, with a private path to the ocean. The interior is fully modernized, but retains its original charm. The view is unmatched. North Point, the most beautiful and tranquil stretch of Port Harvel's coast. Curiosity won over caution. When can I see it? I can arrange a private viewing tomorrow morning at 10. I agreed, then looked him up online. Indeed, Thaddeus Queen was a reputable broker, known for selling a historic Westholme mansion for over $4 million. That night, I dreamed of the lighthouse, the rocky cliffs, and light sweeping across the old maps. When I woke, I knew visiting wasn't about buying it, was about seeing what might be possible. The road to North Point curved along the shoreline, revealing grander views with every mile. I rented a private car. I didn't want to arrive by taxi. As we turned the final bend, the house came into view and I caught my breath. A stone cottage stood beside the old lighthouse, its walls silvered with moss, its large windows facing the sea. A modern glass addition jutted toward the ocean, and a sloping garden led down to a private cove. Thaddeus was waiting, smiling with practiced warmth. Welcome to Lighthouse Point. Inside was a perfect blend of history and modern design, original stone walls, exposed beams, and sunlight pouring across elegant contemporary furnishings. The previous owner was an architect, Thaddeus explained. He kept the historic elements but added this glass extension for light, with heated floors and bird-safe windows. Upstairs, the master bedroom was enclosed entirely in glass, suspended between sky and sea. A private balcony wrapped around the space, its sliding doors opening to the salty wind. The lighthouse is still operational, but fully automated now, he continued. You'd have exclusive access, including the former keeper's office. The last owner turned it into a studio. My heart skipped at that word studio. We walked down a stone path to a smaller building built into the hillside, its wide windows facing north. Sunlight streamed in. The light here is unique, Thaddeus said. The last owner used it as a design studio, but I imagine it would be perfect for a painter. I stepped inside and instantly knew he was right. The light was even and pure, ideal for painting. I could picture a work table, brushes, watercolor palettes, and the endless sea as inspiration. The property includes the house, the studio, and 1.8 acres around it, with private rights to the cove, he added. Extremely rare, only 3 homes on this coast have that privilege. I'd like to know the price, I said, keeping my voice calm. $3,200,000, he replied. It's historically certified, which means tax benefits, and all systems are newly installed. 3 days ago, that figure would have been beyond imagination. Now it represents about 1/3 of my post-tax assets. I'd like to see the garden, I said, neither accepting nor refusing. He led me through winding stone paths lined with native plants, the very species I'd spent a lifetime illustrating. The irrigation is fully automatic, he said. A gardener comes twice a week, included in the maintenance plan if you choose. At the end of the path, stone steps descended to a crescent-shaped beach bordered by cliffs completely private. It's beautiful, I said. And perfect for you, he replied. Some homes seem built to wait for their rightful owner. Back at the main house, he handed me a folder containing details, certificates, and maintenance records. Take your time, he said. But there's a party from Westholme interested as well, so don't wait too long. On the drive back to the hotel, I didn't think about the cost or upkeep, only the feeling of standing in that studio, with sunlight, sea air, and the quiet promise of beginning again. As soon as I reached my room, I called Valencia for her thoughts. I described the North Point house, and she was silent for a moment before saying, "You're not asking if you can afford it, Teresa. You're asking if you'll allow yourself to live there." Her words stopped me cold. It feels extravagant, doesn't it? But maybe it's how you reclaim the space you've always needed: physical, creative, emotional space. Valencia was probably the first person to see what I hadn't dared admit. Over the years with Jessalyn and Rafferty, I had shrunk myself smaller and smaller. My study became Jessalyn's playroom, then her study corner, then a storage room, then Rafferty's office. My garden was cut down to make space for an outdoor entertainment area. Even my kitchen, once my sanctuary, had been rearranged to Jessalyn's liking. "Talk to your financial advisor," Valencia said. "Run every number carefully. But Teresa, if that house is calling to you, and you can afford it without risking your stability, Maybe it's time to let yourself live wide open. After hanging up, I sat by the window, watching boats drift across the golden afternoon harbor. In the distance, the lighthouse beams swept rhythmically across the horizon. For years, I had been that guiding light for others, steady, devoted, self-sacrificing. Maybe now it was time to let it guide me home. The next morning, the newspaper arrived with breakfast. On the society page was a photo of me in my teal dress, speaking with Imogen and Dr. Wilford at the auction. The caption read, "Local artist Teresa Thornwick sets record purchase with rare Winthrop charts." I nearly choked reading it. A smaller article below mentioned I might loan the collection to the museum. My heart pounded. I had thought of it as a private act of courage, not public news. Then I imagined Jessalyn reading it in the house she and Rafferty still occupied under eviction notice. The phone rang. Of course it was Jessalyn. Care to explain this? Her voice was icy. "Good morning, darling," I said, taking another sip of tea. "Cut the act. The paper says you spent $100,000 on old maps. Where did you get that kind of money?" I hesitated. Sooner or later, the lottery would come out, but not yet. Not while they still had access to my home and everything in it. "My finances are no longer your concern, Jessalyn," I said evenly. "Of course they are. You're my mother. I'm just worried you've lost your mind, spending money you don't have, or are you hiding assets and pretending to be poor?" I had never pretended to be poor, only careful, something she had never understood. "The purchase was well within my means," I said firmly. "It's an investment. The museum will preserve them properly." "An investment?" she scoffed. "Since when do you know anything about investing? You've never had 2 nickels to rub together." Then her tone shifted, calculating. "Or did Dad leave you something you've been hiding, a bank account? Property?" I almost hung up. "Your father left nothing but debts. I spent 30 years paying them off and raising you. As I said, my finances are not your concern. Now I have somewhere to be." I ended the call, my hands shaking with anger. I had never realized how little my daughter thought of me to assume I'd hidden money after working myself to exhaustion just to keep us afloat. If they wanted control, I knew how to keep secrets too. I owed them no explanation about the lottery, especially after all the ways they had used me. My next appointment was with Zachary Pittman, my financial advisor, to discuss the Lighthouse Point purchase. He reviewed the numbers and nodded. "The house would take less than half of your total winnings. After your investments and living expenses, you'd remain in excellent shape. Financially, you're fine." "I still worry," I admitted. "It's a big purchase." "I understand, but you're buying a historic property in a prime location that aligns with your professional background. That's not impulse, that's vision." His words steadied me. I called Thaddeus Queen to confirm my decision to buy Lighthouse Point. "Wonderful," he said, clearly delighted. "I'll prepare the contract right away. The sellers are eager, so we can close soon. Could you finalize within 30 days? 30 days, the same deadline Jessalyn and Rafferty had to vacate my old house. I smiled. "Yes, I'm ready." Everything moved quickly, approvals, inspections, signatures. I felt energized, decisive in a way I hadn't been in years. 3 days later, I met Dr. Wilford at the Westholme Maritime Museum to finalize the loan of the maps. The building glass and steel gleaming over the harbor blended beautifully with the old shipyard beside it. He led me through the exhibits, showing the section dedicated to Captain Winthrop, nautical tools, marine specimens, journals, and less detailed versions of his charts. "Your maps will complete the story," he said, pointing to an empty glass case. "They represent the peak of Winthrop's career." I was deeply moved. He handed me a folder. "A 5-year loan agreement, renewable. The museum will handle preservation, insurance, and security. Your ownership will be fully credited." As I reviewed the papers, my eyes drifted to a small nearby display botanical illustrations of coastal plants. "These are special," he said. "We've been trying to locate the artist to expand the exhibit, but without success." I stepped closer and recognized them instantly, my own drawings from 20 years ago for the Coastal Flora project. "I painted these," I said quietly. Dr. Wilford looked stunned. "You're Teresa Thornwick, the botanical illustrator? Now it all makes sense why you were drawn to Winthrop's charts." An idea suddenly came to me. "Dr. Wilford," I said, "perhaps I could contribute more than just lending the maps." 2 hours later, when I left the museum, our agreement had expanded. I would create a new series of paintings documenting the changes in coastal flora over the past 2 centuries. The museum would host an exhibit combining Winthrop's charts with my artwork and possibly take it on tour to other museums along the East Coast. For the first time in years, I had a project that made my heart race. Once the work began, I would live at Lighthouse Point where light, sea, and wind converged, the perfect environment for creation. But that excitement didn't last long. When the car pulled up to the Crimson Tide Hotel, I saw Rafferty standing in the lobby, arguing heatedly with the manager. His body leaned forward, one hand pointing sharply, and I immediately went on alert. I asked the driver to pull into the staff entrance. One advantage of a luxury hotel is discretion. I asked a kitchen employee to guide me to the service elevator to avoid being seen. Once inside my room, I called the front desk. "Felix," there's a tall man with dark hair, in an expensive but slightly disheveled suit, speaking to the manager. "Do you know what that's about?" Felix lowered his voice. "He claims to be your son-in-law, Mrs. Thornwick. Says he's concerned about your mental state and your spending habits." The manager was maintaining professional confidentiality, but Felix said the man was being very insistent. A chill ran through me. They were escalating from private accusations to public attempts to control me. "Thank you for letting me know," I said quickly. "If he asks for my room number or tries to reach this floor, contact security immediately." "Of course, Mrs. Thornwick. Would you like us to station someone on your floor?" "Yes, I think that would be safer." After hanging up, I called Valencia and told her everything. "They're desperate," she said. "The article about the map purchase forced their hand. They need to create a narrative that you're unstable before you do something that takes away their control." "What's their goal?" I asked. "Even if they convince someone I'm not well, what do they gain?" "If they can get a doctor to question your ability to manage finances, they could request temporary guardianship. That would freeze all your assets until a court review." The thought made me shudder. Can they actually do that? Difficult, but not impossible. "You've demonstrated sound judgment, clear financial counsel, rational decisions. But family cases can get messy. The best defense is public proof of independence and competence like the museum exhibit." I nodded. "Yes, professional projects, public visibility, reputable partnerships, they'll make my stability undeniable." After the call, I sat by the window overlooking the busy harbor, planning my next move. Avoiding Rafferty in the lobby was one thing, but I couldn't hide forever. If I changed hotels, they'd just track me down. No, it was time to go on the offensive. I called Imogen at Blackburn's, a plan already forming. "Teresa, how nice to hear your voice. How are things with the maps?" "That's why I'm calling. The Maritime Museum wants to host a joint exhibition Winthrop's charts alongside my new botanical series. I wondered if Blackburn's might host a small reception to announce the collaboration." Imogen paused, then spoke with excitement. "That's a wonderful idea, a private evening celebrating Port Harville's classical and contemporary art. We could invite the museum's donors, collectors, and members of the art community. When were you thinking?" "As soon as possible this week, if it's doable." "That's quick," she laughed. "But let me speak with our events coordinator. I'm sure we can arrange it. This is exactly the kind of partnership Blackburn's wants to support." That very evening, preparations began for the Thursday reception. The invitations would position me exactly where I needed to be, not as an erratic older woman, but as a respected artist embarking on a major project. The next morning, when I went down for breakfast, I half expected Rafferty to appear, but instead, a sealed envelope had been slipped under my door. Inside was a letter from Dr. Elias Harmon, expressing professional concern about behavioral and financial irregularities, reportedly based on statements from family members. He requested that I schedule a psychological evaluation as soon as possible. I recognized the name. Harmon was a colleague of Octavia's husband, both on the Westholme Medical Center board. This wasn't a real medical concern. It was Jessalyn and Rafferty's next move. I took the letter straight to Valencia. She read it, her expression darkening. Unbelievable, she snapped. He's never examined you, never even met you, yet he's implying mental instability based solely on statements from people with a financial interest. That's borderline malpractice. What should I do? I asked. Respond through me. We'll send a formal letter expressing surprise at such unprofessional conduct and demanding specific evidence while disclosing his connection to your daughter and son-in-law. I'll forward a copy to the state medical board. Her approach was perfect calm but unmistakably assertive. I had legal representation, and I would not be intimidated. In the meantime, Valencia continued, we should expedite the Lighthouse Point purchase. The sooner the title is in your name, the stronger your position. I left her office feeling steadier and more certain. That afternoon, I met with Thaddeus to sign additional documents. The sellers had agreed, and with a sizable deposit, the transfer could be completed in 3 weeks. I've arranged for the contractor to meet us at the property tomorrow, Thaddeus said. You can discuss any updates you'd like. The previous owner left detailed plans. It'll be an easy process. The next morning, standing inside the sun-filled studio at Lighthouse Point with the contractor, a practical woman named Elise, who specialized in restoring historic homes, I felt creativity returning to me. The space is already wonderful, I said. I'd just like more storage for art supplies, and perhaps a few skylights for natural light. Elise nodded, taking notes. Skylights can be tricky in historic structures, but I'll find a solution that works. And the main house? She asked. We walked through each room, discussing small refinements, updating the bathrooms, expanding the closet, upgrading kitchen fixtures while preserving the original woodwork. Nothing major, just enough to make the house mine. When do you think it could be finished? I asked. If permits move quickly, we can complete the main work before you move in. The studio will be first. Perfect. Start as soon as possible. As we walked back to the driveway, Elise stopped. Forgive me if I'm being forward, but are you the illustrator of the Coastal Flora series? Surprised, I nodded. Her face lit up. My father was a park ranger. He used your drawings to teach me about native plants when I was little. He always said your art captured the spirit of nature better than any photograph. She looked toward the sea. This place was meant for you. Her words caught in my throat. After years of meticulous work, documenting every detail, I finally saw that it all had meaning. Back at the hotel, I felt sure I was on the right path. Lighthouse Point wasn't an impulsive purchase, it was the place where I could rediscover myself and my purpose. But that certainty was tested the next day when I arrived at Blackburn's to meet Imogen about the reception. As I stepped inside, I nearly collided with Jessalyn, who was storming out of Imogen's office, her face flushed with anger. She froze, eyes blazing. So this is where you've been hiding? I'm not hiding, I said calmly. I have a meeting with Imogen about the art reception. Oh, I heard, she sneered. What a spectacular comeback from neglectful mother to celebrated artist. I kept my tone steady, aware a few employees were eavesdropping. I've always been an artist, Jessalyn. That never changed. No, she hissed. It was always your excuse to complain. Poor suffering artist, sacrificing for her family. Well, you've got what you wanted now alone, with your silly little sketches. Her words cut deep. I'd spent my life trying not to make my daughter feel like a burden. I lowered my voice. I never regretted raising you, only that you grew up believing you were the only one who mattered. Her face flushed red. Oh, stop pretending. You're enjoying the attention, aren't you? Enjoy it while it lasts. People are about to start asking questions about your spending and your unusual behavior. There's nothing unusual about pursuing one's career, I replied. The only reason anyone's questioning it is because you've been stirring rumors. She stepped closer, her voice low but sharp. We know, Mom. About the money. You think you can hide it? In this town, word travels fast. My chest tightened, but I kept my face composed. Of course they had found out. I wasn't hiding it, I said slowly. I just hadn't decided what to do yet. You mean you haven't decided whether to share any of it with us? she said louder. "After everything we've done for you?" I let out a quiet laugh. "And what exactly have you done for me, Jessalyn?" She opened her mouth, but no words came. I went on. "You took my house, tried to send me to a nursing facility, and spread rumors that I'd lost my mind." Jessalyn faltered, then forced her composure back. "We were only trying to help you. Now I see you've been sitting on a fortune, letting us think you were struggling." "I won the lottery earlier this week," I said clearly, "long after you tried to put me in Serenity Gardens. And I chose not to tell you because watching how you've acted proves I was right." Just then, Imogen appeared, her tone calm but firm. "Teresa, I'm ready for our meeting." "Thank you for coming, Mrs. Thornwick," Imogen said, as Jessalyn shot me one last furious look and stormed off, her heels echoing across the marble floor. I exhaled slowly. "I'm sorry about that scene." Imogen smiled gently. "Family matters are rarely simple." She shifted the topic seamlessly. "About the reception, we've set the date for Thursday evening. Dr. Wilford is very enthusiastic and has provided a list of museum patrons to invite. We've also drafted a press release highlighting the collaboration. We spent over an hour reviewing every detail from menu and drinks to the guest list. Everything was coming together, positioning me exactly where I needed to be. A respected artist, not a woman questioned for her sanity." Before I left, Imogen looked at me with warmth. "Teresa, I hope you don't mind me saying this, but I truly admire how you've handled all of this. Most people in your situation would crumble or retreat, but you haven't." Her words strengthened my resolve. I wasn't just fighting for independence or a lottery fortune. I was reclaiming myself, my voice, my worth, the confidence I'd allowed others to diminish for years. The days leading up to the reception passed in careful preparation. I met with Dr. Wilford to finalize exhibit details, worked with the tailor Vivian had recommended to adjust my emerald silk dress, and completed the paperwork for Lighthouse Point. Valencia informed me that our letter to Dr. Harmon had worked. He quickly retracted his statement, claiming it had only been a preliminary concern, not a formal diagnosis. The state medical board demanded an explanation, leaving him cornered. The eviction of Jessalyn and Rafferty was proceeding on schedule. They had 3 weeks left before they'd be forced to vacate my home. Valencia also hired a security team to monitor the property during the transition, ensuring nothing was damaged or stolen. On the morning of the reception, I received unexpected news. A reporter from the Port Harville Herald called, saying the paper wanted to feature me, the lottery winner, the new owner of Lighthouse Point, and the artist behind the upcoming exhibition. After consulting with Valencia, I agreed. I wanted to shape my own story, rather than let gossip from Jessalyn and Rafferty take over. The reporter, a calm and professional woman named Dahlia, met me in the hotel's private dining room. She asked about my career, the exhibition, and how winning the lottery had allowed me to return to art. At the end of the interview, she asked carefully, "There are rumors of family conflicts. Would you like to comment on that?" I smiled. Family relationships are always complicated, especially when circumstances change suddenly. Right now, I'm simply focused on building a creative space of my own and contributing to the cultural life of Port Harville. The exhibition with the Maritime Museum carries deep meaning. It connects historical and modern observation, like a conversation across time about how this coastline has transformed. Dahlia nodded, understanding that I had gracefully redirected the focus to my work instead of my private life. Before leaving, she added, "If you could say one thing to people who receive an unexpected opportunity in midlife, what would it be?" I thought for a moment and answered, that it's never too late to reconnect with the part of yourself you once set aside. For me, that's art and nature. For others, it might be music, writing, or travel. Taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's necessary. No one can give from an empty heart. After the interview, I returned to my room to get ready for the evening. As I clasped a simple pearl necklace around my neck, I caught my reflection in the mirror and felt astonished. Just a few weeks ago, I had been retreating inside my own home, afraid of confrontation, doubting my feelings and my needs. Now I was about to step out before the public, announcing my own exhibition, staying in a luxury hotel, and preparing to move into a home that bore my name. The change wasn't just outward, it was within. I had reclaimed my voice, my autonomy, and my ability to make choices guided by my own desires, not anyone else's. The woman in the mirror looked back at me with confidence, bright eyes, steady posture, no trace of the hesitation that had marked the past years. I had once shrunk myself, accepted less to keep the peace, sacrificed dreams for others. No more. Now I stood tall, needing no permission to exist. A text came from the driver Imogen had arranged. "The car is ready, Mrs. Thornwick." I took a deep breath, adjusted my dress, and stepped out the door. Whatever happened, whether Jessalyn or Rafferty appeared, whether gossip spread, I was ready. This was my night, my life, and my new beginning. The hotel lobby buzzed with movement. Felix from the front desk hurried over. "Mrs. Thornwick, you look stunning," he said with a warm smile. "Your car's waiting outside, and if I may add, your piece in tomorrow's Herald is wonderful. Dahlia sent me an advance copy." "Thank you, Felix," I replied, heading toward the main entrance. I caught a glimpse of Rafferty near the reception desk, murmuring to an unfamiliar man. When he saw me, his expression froze, then he leaned closer to whisper something to the man. I didn't slow my pace. There was no gesture, no acknowledgement. Tonight wasn't for confrontation. This was the moment I stepped into a world I had long admired but never believed I belonged to. The driver opened the door. I stepped outside, breathing in the night air scented with sea salt and jasmine from the hotel garden. The sleek black car waited, elegant and discreet. As it rolled away from the crimson tide, I saw Rafferty rushing toward the door, but too late. I was on my way to Blackburn's, where the room would be filled with light and people who would see me not as an aging mother, but as an artist with a voice and true worth. Blackburn's auction house gleamed under soft golden lights. The normally formal space had been transformed into an elegant gathering, filled with Port Harval's cultural elite. Glass cases displayed maritime antiques, enlarged reproductions of Winthrop's charts lined the walls, and my coastal flora illustrations were elegantly framed, forming a bridge between past and present, exactly the kind of exhibition I had always envisioned. Imogen greeted me at the entrance, poised in a fitted black dress. "Teresa, you look incredible. Perfect timing. Dr. Wilford is eager to make the formal announcement." I followed her into the main gallery, where about 50 guests mingled, champagne glasses in hand. I recognized a few faces from the auction, the museum's board members, business owners, even several professors from Westholme University, where I once lectured on botanical illustration. Dr. Wilford approached with a dignified woman in her 60s. "Teresa, may I introduce Dr. Eleanor Boss, the museum's director? She came especially to meet you and discuss the exhibition." "Mrs. Thornwick," Dr. Boss said warmly, "I've admired your work for years. When Harrison told me about the Winthrop chart acquisition and the idea of pairing them with your pieces, I knew it would be extraordinary. The historical and scientific value is immense." We spoke passionately about the exhibition, its presentation, timeline, and educational outreach. Dr. Boss's enthusiasm was infectious, and the genuine respect in her eyes made me feel truly seen. Soon others joined our conversation: donors, fellow artists, collectors intrigued by the Winthrop maps. Each exchange, each comment about the project strengthened my place within Port Harval's artistic and academic community. "You should see the preliminary design for the exhibit," Dr. Wilford said, guiding me to a display model that illustrated how the museum planned to integrate the antique charts with my new botanical illustrations. As I studied it, a murmur rose near the entrance. I looked up. Jessalyn and Rafferty had entered with Octavia Harcourt, looking awkward amid the refined crowd. Imogen immediately came to my side, whispering, "Uninvited guests." "Should I call security?" she asked quietly. I paused, then shook my head. "No, let them stay, but keep someone close." "Lawrence already has eyes on them," she replied. I turned back to Dr. Wilford, fully focused on our conversation. I wanted them to see what they had tried to diminish: a woman respected and engaged, discussing her own artistic achievements. Dr. Wilford had just begun introducing a potential sponsor when Jessalyn approached, her smile stiff. "Mother, How lovely to see you here. I turned calmly. Jessalyn, I didn't know you had an interest in maritime history or botanical illustration. We heard about this event and couldn't miss it, she said, her tone sugary but sharp. After all, it's not every day you announce an exhibition. Dr. Wilford and Dr. Boss exchanged knowing glances. Dr. Boss smiled diplomatically. You must be very proud of your mother. Her work is an important record of how coastal ecosystems have evolved. Jessalyn's smile faltered. Of course, though I must say her sudden re-emergence took us by surprise. She's been rather unpredictable lately. On the contrary, Dr. Wilford said swiftly, Mrs. Thornwick has shown remarkable vision and clarity throughout this project. We've been eager to collaborate with her for years. I knew it was a polite defense, but his support touched me. How interesting, Jessalyn said dryly. At home, she never mentioned any of this. She seemed perfectly content in retirement until recently. Her intent was clear: to plant seeds of doubt about my stability, to imply impulsiveness. Artists rarely retire in the conventional sense, Dr. Boss interjected smoothly. They simply transition from public creation to personal exploration. Isn't that right, Mrs. Thornwick? Exactly, I nodded. And connecting my work to Captain Winthrop's documents has special meaning. The continuity across centuries has always fascinated me. As I spoke, Imogen gently tapped her champagne glass, drawing the room's attention. Good evening. Thank you all for joining us for this special announcement. Blackburns is honored to host the collaboration between the Maritime Museum and one of Port Harvel's most respected artists, Mrs. Teresa Thornwick. Applause filled the room, and I saw Jessalyn stiffen beside me. As many of you know, Imogen continued, Mrs. Thornwick recently acquired the renowned Winthrop Maritime charts at our auction. Instead of keeping them private, she's generously agreed to loan them to the museum, where they'll be displayed alongside her new botanical illustrations, a one-of-a-kind exhibition spanning 2 centuries of coastal change. The applause grew louder, mingled with admiring murmurs. I glimpsed Rafferty whispering something to Octavia across the room, his expression calculating. Dr. Wilford stepped forward to elaborate on the historical and scientific significance of the exhibit, referencing past museum displays of my work at natural history institutions across the country. Her keen eye for detail, scientific precision, and emotional depth make her the ideal collaborator for this project. Warmth filled my chest. Years of study and quiet sketches between motherhood and responsibility were finally being honored. When he finished, Dr. Wilford invited me to speak. I stepped to the center of the room, feeling an unexpected calm, even under Jessalyn's unwavering stare. Thank you all for such a warm welcome, I began. The maritime history of Port Harvel has always been intertwined with the natural world around it. Captain Winthrop understood that his charts include detailed notes on plants and tides. I'm simply continuing that tradition, recording how coastal nature evolves and adapts over time. I paused, scanning the room. This exhibition is a dialogue between past and present, a way to understand environmental change through the lens of centuries. I'm deeply grateful to the museum for its vision, and to all of you for your interest. Applause echoed again, glasses clinking, faces glowing with approval. When I stepped back, Dr. Boss approached with another woman, an academic-looking figure in her 50s. Teresa, let me introduce Professor Harriet Montgomery from Westholme University's Department of Environmental Studies. She's very interested in the educational aspect of the exhibit. Mrs. Thornwick, the professor said enthusiastically, your marshland ecosystem studies have been foundational for our conservation curriculum. We've used your illustrations in our courses for years. Would you consider developing educational materials to accompany the exhibition, perhaps even guest lecturing for our graduate students? Before I could respond, Rafferty interjected, Octavia right behind him. I'm afraid my mother-in-law's schedule will be quite full in the coming months, he said smoothly. Health and family obligations, you understand. Professor Montgomery frowned slightly. It wouldn't be immediate, we could be flexible. Even so, Rafferty pressed. At her age, with recent signs of strain, we'd advise against unnecessary stress. Anger rose in me. Rafferty, I said evenly but firmly, I don't recall appointing you as my assistant or medical advisor. Professor Montgomery, I'd be delighted to discuss the program further. Perhaps we can meet next week? The professor nodded, clearly sensing the tension. Wonderful. I'll coordinate with Dr. Wilford to arrange it. As she walked away, Rafferty leaned in, voice low with controlled fury. What are you doing? Taking projects, launching exhibitions, buying property, all without consulting your family. You're not yourself, Teresa. On the contrary, I smiled. This is the real me. You've just never noticed. His eyes darkened. Jessalyn's worried about you. These impulsive actions, this reckless spending, it's not rational. Purchasing historically significant artifacts relevant to my work isn't reckless, I said. Nor is accepting an exhibition or buying a home for my art. The only irrational thing would be letting you and Jessalyn keep controlling my life. Octavia stepped in, her tone syrupy. Dear Teresa, we only care about your well-being. Sudden wealth can be disorienting, especially at your age. There are so many who would take advantage. I've realized that. I cut in, meeting her gaze. She faltered, then forced her gentle facade again. The pressure, the media, all of this can't be good for your heart. Dr. Harmon is quite concerned. I smiled thinly. How interesting that a doctor who's never met me is so concerned. My own physician, Dr. Mills, who's treated me for 15 years, says I'm in perfect health. But I'm sure you know better, don't you? Rafferty's expression hardened. This attitude helps no one, Teresa. We're only trying to protect you. I looked him straight in the eye, my voice low and cold. Protect me from what? Independence? Work? Or the right to make my own decisions? I hadn't yet answered when a commotion rose near the entrance. A tall man with silver hair, holding a professional camera, was trying to enter but was stopped by Blackburn's security team. Lawrence passed by and murmured, "Reporter, not on the guest list. I'll handle it." But Jessalyn had already noticed and quickly made her way toward the door, with Octavia right behind her. I caught fragments of their exchange with security. Health issues, erratic behavior, family matter. It was clear they were trying to turn the reception into a media spectacle to reinforce their fabricated story about my instability. Imogen came to my side and whispered, "This is getting messy. Do you want to wait in my office for a bit?" I paused for a second, then shook my head. Leaving now would only confirm the image they were trying to create, a fragile woman in need of protection. No need. But perhaps this is the perfect time for a toast. Imogen understood immediately. Within minutes, she had the room's attention again, introducing Dr. Boss and announcing the official toast for the exhibition. As glasses were raised and cameras flashed, I stood between Dr. Wilford and Professor Montgomery, presenting the perfect image of professionalism and partnership. From across the room, I saw Jessalyn's tense face. Her plan to sabotage the evening had failed as everyone's focus returned to the event. The uninvited reporter was escorted out quietly, and the atmosphere quickly regained its warmth. After the toast, the guests mingled, shaking hands, offering congratulations, and expressing interest in future collaborations. Each conversation, each compliment, was another step, solidifying my standing. No one could question my competence or clarity anymore. I was speaking with a maritime historian when I noticed Jessalyn standing nearby, watching my every move. When the conversation ended, she stepped forward, her voice low but dripping with sarcasm. "You've planned everything, haven't you? Not just this exhibition, all the purchases, connections, public appearances, all to prove you're independent and stable before we could even express concern." I met her gaze. If concern means trying to control my choices and my finances, then yes, I've been strategic. I'm just reclaiming the parts of my life I lost for too long. Her eyes flickered with anger, and something like reluctant acknowledgement. "We've never seen this side of you," she said, almost accusingly. "At home, no one ever talked about your art or your talent." "Because you never asked," I replied. "You only cared about what I could give you, not who I am." Jessalyn hesitated. "That's not fair." "Not fair. When did you ever ask about my work or care about my ideas unless they benefited you?" She said nothing, her head dipping slightly, a flicker of remorse crossing her face before her familiar mask of pride returned. "This new version of you, the confident artist, the wealthy collector, hasn't changed a thing," she said coldly. "Money just exposes who you really are." "No," I answered softly. "Money just reveals who I've always been, the woman who raised you, supported your dreams, and put aside her own over and over again. The only difference is that now I don't have to shrink so others can feel comfortable." Rafferty stepped in, his face flushed with anger. "We're leaving. This is all ridiculous." Jessalyn hesitated, looking at me with something uncertain in her eyes. "This isn't over, Mother." "It can be," I said quietly. "Or it can be a new beginning if you're willing to see me as who I am, not the image you need me to be." A flicker of doubt crossed her eyes, but Rafferty's hand tightened around her arm, pulling her away. "Come on," he snapped. "We're wasting our time here." As they left, a mix of emotions washed over me, relief that things hadn't escalated, sadness over the growing distance, and peace in knowing I was on the right path. The rest of the evening unfolded smoothly. Guests chatted warmly, forming genuine connections. When the last person left, I felt exhausted but deeply content, the kind of tiredness that comes from true purpose, not from pleasing others. "An absolute success," Imogen said, as we sat in her office with Dr. Wilford and Dr. Boss. "The exhibition is attracting serious attention. Several sponsors have already offered to support the educational component," added Professor Montgomery. "Westholme University is thrilled. Our environmental students will learn so much from the integration of historical data and modern conservation research."